Hey guys, this is Fergal from Poker VIP. We are back to part 2 of our beginner's guide to cash game poker. So we're jumping straight into the action. We have it on the go. We've actually just turned a set over on the bottom left table, which we will accept. We'll just have a quick chat about this hand, and then I'll do the usual introductions. Unfortunately, we get no action. So as I said, we're following on directly from part 1. Anyone who has watched that part will be fully familiar with the layout and the setup that we're going for. So we're playing this game over on Betsafe Poker. We are playing 4NL. We're playing over on their regular tables there. So we're jumping, as I said, we're straight into the action. Anyone who hasn't watched part 1, obviously you don't have to, but I would recommend checking it out beforehand. As I said, this is a direct continuation on, so we're recording it directly afterwards. So we have a little bit of history with these players now. We've got a bit of a feel for how they are starting to play. Obviously we haven't played tons of hands, only like a half an hour with them, but we definitely have a bit more information than we did at the very beginning of the session, which is all that we can ask, really. So we went for a 3-bet with ace-jack versus a button open, which I think is pretty standard. We are going to go ahead and c-bet this board. I'm going to fire again because this guy shouldn't ever really have, he shouldn't have connected that strongly with this board too often. And I think he's definitely going to have some kind of floats with kind of hands with gut shots and those types of hands, like 10-jack, queen-jack, those types of hands that have open-enders or gut shots with overcards. We can put those hands under a lot of pressure with a second barrel. And we are going to go ahead and check now. When all of the draws have missed, I would be tempted to check call if he bets here, to be perfectly honest, because it doesn't really make sense for him to be betting much of his single pairs after this line has been taken. So I'm going to go ahead and call down here and see what he shows up with. So he has the 10-jack, so he picked up an open-ended straight flush draw on the return, and that bricked off. So that allowed us to induce bluffs in those sorts of situations where, his range, as I said, it just didn't really make that much sense for him to be betting with much of his kind of showdown value hands with the way that the hand played out. So we gave him maximum opportunity to make those mistakes, and we get to call down with ace high and be correct, which is always fun. So ace queen with top on the top right table, obviously a very standard open from the button, and we are going to go ahead and c-bet now. Oh, we timed out on one of our tables by mistake. Hopefully we didn't time out anything of note. So hopefully Kairos has some sort of hand that he's willing to go with. He only has $1.23 behind, so we're never going to be considering folding on this flop. If he decides to get the money in on a turn, if a 9 rolls off or a jack rolls off or something like that that makes the board particularly bad for us, then we may consider a fold. We're going to call from the big blind with a raggedy ace and see a flop. The king-queen suited is obviously pretty standard open from any position as well. So when this guy bets when check 2, we are just going to go ahead and do that folding thing and give up our hand. The ace-6 suited, we are probably going to be playing. We'll use this as a 3-bet bluffing hand versus a late position opener. So we're going to make it 40 cent over this guy's 10 cent open. So Mozgan again decides to overcall. This happened in part 1, I believe, where this exact situation arose. He opened, we 3-bet, and this guy overcalled behind. So if this guy is starting to do those kinds of overcalls quite frequently, it's going to put us in a lot of awkward spots post-flop if we keep 3-betting aggressively from the small blind. Obviously a fantastic flop for us where we have top pair and the flush draw. We're certainly not going to be folding. It's just a case now of whether we want to check raise all in or check call. There's already €2 in the pot. I think my preference here is just to get it all in. We're going to have absolutely tons of equity no matter what. Hopefully he doesn't have a set like pocket 8s or something like that. But I think just the check jam, because if we just call and a non-spade, right, like say if a 10 of hearts rolls off and Mozgan bets again quite large, it puts us in a lot of awkward spots. So I think just by jamming there, the pot's already reasonably substantial. It avoids us getting bluffed off our hand if we don't hit our straight, if he is ever bluffing there. And yeah, I think getting it in with the pair, with top pair and a flush draw is never going to be a terrible play either. So I think just check jamming there is going to be fine and eliminates a lot of potentially awkward decisions on the turn and the river. It might not be the most optimal play in terms of equity, but it's never going to be that bad either. That's the way I look at those kinds of situations. So we're going to open this up with a 3-bet, ace-4, blind versus blind. And we're going to check back our pocket tens. Obviously, it's a pretty bad board for us with the tens, given that there are 2 overcards out there. There's also possible flush draws and so on too. We're going to bet half pot into Alisi Ush to our right here in the top right table. We flopped a pair, so we want to protect our hand just a little bit. So this guy calls. We are going to check back now. And we improve to a full house. Obviously, that doesn't really change much though. If he had us beat on the flop, he still has us beat. I mean, this is a really, really weird line that he's taken here. I'm not going to fold. Like, I'm not folding. He has the ace-jack, which is really tilting. I was kind of say, like, if we're beat here, it kind of makes the most sense that it's to a jack. But he shouldn't really have that much jack X, was kind of my line of thinking there. So, yeah, I guess we just call it off there, because I don't think he's betting like a hand like pocket eights there for value or anything like that. So I don't mind our call. It's just an unfortunate turn for us, obviously. We're going to fold here. We opened up the 9-10 suited from under the gun. We get 3-bet by the button. Generally speaking, when people 3-bet and under the gun open, they're going to have, you know, a strong hand. Typically speaking, 9-10 suited, oh, sorry, one of the guys did call. I didn't actually realize that. I was going to say, if one of the blinds calls, then we probably have the right price to go ahead and call ourselves. I did not realize that he had stuck around. So in multi-way pots, we're definitely happy to play these kinds of hands in 3-bet pots, because we're just going to turn 2 pair because we're brilliant like that. We're going to start betting now. The only problem is here, when this guy checks back, it's hard for him to have an ace, so I think that this is we're probably gonna get a decent number of folds through, but I think checking another street is gonna be a mistake with this kind of hand. Our hand has deteriorated quite significantly now, so our opponent is gonna have some better 2 pairs. They're gonna have some straights, but not, like, they shouldn't have tons. But more importantly, it's gonna be much harder for them to pay off with their single pair hands now that there is 4 to a straight on the board, so I think we're just gonna check this one back. So he has the queen and the jacks, so he rivered a pair. He may have decided to call a bet with that, but I think it's a little bit optimistic. So we're going to go ahead and 3-bet with the ace and the king on the button. And with pocket eights and the button down in the bottom left table as well. That is, of course, going to be an open. Anyway, like we're going to be opening, obviously, every single pair from the button. We're going to be opening most pairs from all positions, to be perfectly honest. So this guy decides to re-pop us. I mean, I'm not folding ace-king here. It's a question of just whether we want to call or whether we just want to ship. I think we're just going to ship it all in here now. If he ever folds like a pair, that's an absolutely fantastic result for us. If he has a hand, like to say that he decides to get frisky with, like, you know, pocket 6s, 7s, 8s, 9s, 10s that he decides to fold, which, I mean, facing a 5-bet jam, it's definitely possible. We just pick up a huge amount of equity without having to get to showdown, which is a great result for us. He can have some hands like ace-queen or ace-jack, which it is a bit of a shame that we get him to fold those hands. But as I said, I mean, his other 4-bet hands like queen-jack suited that he might decide to 4-bet, like, they still have reasonable equity against us. So I think just shipping the money in there with ace-king is not going to be atrocious. I wouldn't mind a call there in that situation either, though. So far this has been a bit more of an action-packed session. We've been enjoying it so far. We've picked up a decent few euro with some interesting situations to boot. King 10 suited on the bottom left table. We are going to be bringing it in for a fairly standard open. We are not going to be c-betting this board though. We're going to start this off with a check. There are a decent number of turn cards if it goes check-check that we will start to barrel, but he doesn't let us get there, so we're just going to go ahead and fold. We're going to ISO the limper with pocket eights in the top left table. We're just going to bet small here. The reason that I'm doing this, it's not really, you can't really call it a value bet, but it's one of these unusual spots where it's not really for value and it's not really as a bluff either. It's more so just purely for protection. Now normally I don't really make those kinds of bets too often purely for protection, but with pocket eights on the ace high board, there is a lot going for a c-bet there because our opponent is going to play really, really straightforwardly. If he has an ace, he's calling. If he doesn't have an ace, he's probably folding. And if we check and any overcard hits, which is quite likely on the turn, it's going to put us in a decent amount of awkward situations. Because if we check to him twice, he can definitely start bluffing hands. But when overcards hit and he starts betting himself, we're not sure if he is bluffing or not. So it kind of puts us in a lot of awkward situations that we want to avoid. So I think just firing out a small bet on the flop there has a huge amount of merits going for it. When it gets 3-bet here with the 9-10 suited versus the button open, we're just going to go ahead and fold. And we are going to peel once here with the queen king. The ace is a good card because it reduces the amount of ace-x that our opponent can have. We're going to check this back though, and if he bets on the river, we're going to call. If he checks, we are probably going to bet ourselves. Yeah, we are going to bet ourselves if he checks to us. So he is tanking. His tank is kind of unusual. So what we're trying to get paid, we're trying to get paid here by a worse king, maybe like a 10 if our opponent is particularly bad. He just folds, which is, not entirely unexpected either. But that is a spot where I think a lot of people are just happy to take their showdown value, whereas I think there's definitely value to be had there. And that's like, I kind of talk about this in the thread I made over on Poker VIP for kind of just tips that beginners should take into account. Betting for thin value on the river is just such an important aspect of playing winning games in these limits, because a lot of people don't do it. Like, a lot of people are just way too showdown orientated, so they're giving up absolutely tons and tons of value. So in those spots, if you're able to improve your value betting ranges on the river and get an edge over your opponents, that's just going to make such a huge difference to your win rate. So it's something that I think any new player should really focus hard on. Is kind of figuring out spots where people should bet, even though they don't have like necessarily the nuts or anything close to it, but they should still be betting the river for value with hands like second pair, those types of situations, as well as including what kind of bet sizings that you should be choosing. Sorry, excuse me. So we talk a little bit about bet sizes maybe as the spots arise also. So we don't really have much on the go. We have the king, queen, and the 4 in the bottom left table. That's just going to be a fold. So we don't have any hands right now. We don't have many interesting hands ongoing. We've got a potential pop ruin on the top right table. I didn't see how the action went down pre-flop, but this guy has decided to min bet. So again, I mean, this is the guy who's in for like less than $1. So we're going to assume that he is an extremely poor player. Somehow his min bet took that down, which I don't understand. How a 4-cent bet can take down a Euro pot, I will not understand. So we have the king and the jack offsuit in the top right table in the big blind. We are more than likely going to be playing this hand. So our friend has decided to continue his limping strategy, so we're going to go ahead and bring this in for a raise ourselves. So this guy is folded, this guy is folded. It is to the small blind, and as I said, if he limps or folds, we're going to be raising ourselves. If he decides to raise himself, we are probably going to flat call. So we're going to bring this up to 20 cent, make it so he's got to pay 16 cent into call, and we're going to be c-betting a huge percentage of flops versus this guy. I think that's going to be our general winning strategy versus him. That general sort of loose passive player that you'll encounter quite a lot at these limits, you can seriously exploit them quite hard by isolating them very wide and then c-betting a huge amount of flops because they play so straightforwardly post-flop. They're just calling, seeing all flops, and then just folding immediately when they don't improve. So, like, 2/3 of the time they're not going to improve, so they're just going to go ahead and fold. So yeah, we're in a situation where we can just auto-profit essentially. If we just take that line and, we'll slowly but surely just whittle them down. And those kinds of spots are really important to be able to recognize. Again, really crucial to identify them in order to beat these games. The 9-5 offsuit, not much that we're going to be able to do there. We're just going to go ahead and stick our hand in the muck. Top left table, there is a potential pot brewing. If there is, it's a pretty wet board. There's definitely potential for some strong hands to be out there. There is a bet and a call. Got excited there in the bottom left table. I thought we had aces for a second. It's always tilting the way fours, kind of look a little bit like aces out of the corner area. So the pot is €1. Villain bets 64 cent and gets called. He has 2 pair, perfectly reasonable bet. And the king 5, not much that we're going to be able to do there. The ace-4, we could have considered opening it up because it is in the wheel range, so anything kind of ace-2, 3, 4, and 5 would be considered stronger than hands like ace-6, 7, or 8, which may seem counterintuitive, but the reason for that is because they're connected. So a hand like ace-6 can't flop a straight, whereas a hand like ace-2 or ace-3 or ace-4, ace-5 can. So we could have considered opening it. If it was suited, I definitely would have been opening it, but I think from under the gun, the offsuit varieties are going to be better just to go ahead and muck them. The 10-8 suited, we have a pair, we also have a backdoor flush draw. So I am going to fire here. It protects our hand a little bit. If this was heads up, I would be much more inclined to check it back. But when we're against two people, there's just too many bad cards that can come on the turn for us. This guy calls, so I don't really want to be firing multiple streets here. Oh, we just turned a set on the top left table as well. So I think we're going to check back here, try to realize our equity. Like, I mean, we've got a huge amount of cards to improve, and we're happy just to check this down now. Like, he has ace-king there. He's never going anywhere there. But this is a perfect example that I was just talking about, of people just not maximizing their value, or not kind of just going for value. Now, presumably he was trying to, you know, trap me and try to get me to bluff and so on, which, I mean, is a viable strategy. But he didn't 3-bet pre-flop, which is a mistake. We got raised, which is pretty wonderful. We're going to re-raise you, sir. If we are somehow beat here, he is going to be winning all of our chips. I do mean that. We are not allowing him to not play for stacks when we have turned a disguised set like this. So he raise folds, which, I mean, isn't shocking, but obviously when he does put in the raise there, he's super polarized. Like, I mean, he has a hand that he's unlikely to be doing that with the hand, with the showdown value hand where he's going to be folding. He's going to have some bluffs where it's going to be hard to get more money anyway. If he has a hand like a strong top pair, he's probably going to be going with his hand anyway. And if he has a better set, I mean, you know, we're going to be paying him anyway. So I mean, that's not a big deal. It's something you can't really be too stressed about. People kind of trying to save their chips when they have kind of really, really strong holdings like that. People kind of taking the cautious line. Like, a lot of people might just decide to call there out of fear that he has a hand like pocket sixes that slow played the flop. In those situations, you just have to accept that you are destined to lose the money. You're going to be missing out on just so much value by not trying to play for stacks when you have those set-like hands. So like, if he has a hand like top pair, good kicker, or if he has like some kind of unusual two-pair hand or anything like that, we're missing out on so much value by not putting in that re-raise and looking to play for stacks. We could have flat called, I guess, and then looked to play for stacks on the river. That would have also been a viable option. But I'm fine just putting in the re-raise there on the turn. Queen 6 is going to be a fold on the button. The 8 queen down at the bottom left table, we are going to bring this in for a raise if it's folded to us, but if there's any raise before us, which there is, Horses decides to bring this in, we're just going to let this go. I don't think there's any need to really go out of our way to open our range from the small blind this much. But as I said, if like blind versus blind, it's a pretty standard open. But any raise before us, our hand shrivels up in strength quite significantly. And the Jack 3 suited on the button is going to be a fold as well. We're going to fold that regardless of whether there's any action before us or not. 10-8 suited, we are going to bring it in for a raise though. Tiger Paper decides to flat call on the button. It's not ideal that we don't have position for the hand. We have some backdoor potential. I mean, we're not folding for 4 cent into this amount. Just purely with the amount of backdoors that we have where we can make a move on turns, as well as the kind of some cards that can roll off that just shuts our opponent down that he might fold to. Like if an ace rolls off, for example, we may be able to bluff him off a lot of hands as well. But I know this is kind of unusual calling a 10 high, but it's just, I mean, we're getting like 13 to 1 on our money, and we have 3 to a flush, and we have we have a few different backdoors that we can hit as well. So we pick up a gut shot. Down with the ace jack, we opened under the gun and we got 3-bet from under the gun +1. We're going to have to go ahead and fold our hand here. This guy sizes up his turn bet, so we are just going to go ahead and fold this time. And ace-3 suited in the small blind. It has a strong contender to be used as a 3-bet bluff. So that's what we're going to do versus the button open. So our opponent is having a little bit of a think about it. Hopefully he just goes ahead and folds, or if he does decide to call, hopefully we flop something fun. He does call. We flop a gut shot with some backdoor heart potential. We are going to fire a c-bet here. There's a decent number of turn cards that can roll off that we would barrel on. Fortunately, we don't have to though. We're definitely fine just picking that up uncontested. And the ace-5, we are going to be bringing this in for an open, and the pocket kings, we are of course going to be bringing it in for an open. So hopefully we get some action. But ace-5, when it is opened before us, we're just going to let it go. So hopefully we get some action with our kings now. That is a fun flop for us. So what I was talking about in part 1 was how we should always be, or how we should rarely be slow playing. This is one of these spots where a slow play is acceptable in my opinion, because we have this board seriously crippled. It's going to be very, very difficult for us to get too much value here, so we're going to try to allow our opponent to catch up a little bit. So hopefully he has managed to pick up a jack or something along those lines that he decides to pay us a little bit with. And this is a wonderful run out for us, because if he does have a jack, he'll pay us quite a large bet, I feel. So this is a spot where I'm actually going to put in a pretty substantial overbet, because, as I said, I just think that he's going to be quite jack heavy, I think, and it's going to be very difficult for him to fold a jack. So we're just going to go huge here. So he's thinking about it. And we get the call. We accept your money, sir. We accept your money. So I'm going to assume that he certainly had a jack there. So an absolute dream run out. And it's just one of those spots where if he doesn't have a jack, it's going to be pretty tricky to get paid anyway. And as I said, when he does have the jack, it's going to be very hard for him to fold. So we might as well go absolutely massive with our bet, basically. So we got paid a lot more than we would have if we had just gone for a normal sizing. The only downside there is if we go for a normal sizing, it's possible he goes for the re-raise, in which case we may actually miss out on a little bit of value there. But one thing that I found, like as I said, kind of people, they just don't really tend to re-raise without the absolute stone cold nuts. So even a hand like, 10 jack there is almost certainly not going to be check raising there, which, I mean, I suppose it kind of makes a little bit of sense, because it's going to be hard to get paid when you do check raise with a marginal jack, but like hands like ace jack should almost certainly be putting in the re-raise there, whereas they're not necessarily going to. So when we put in the big bet ourselves, it just ensures that we get paid a significant amount by his kind of raggedy jacks. And speaking of pocket jacks, we have them. We're going to fire out a bet ourselves. We are going to check and check call this turn. So we allow him to bluff with diamonds as well as some other cards. And I mean, like, he shouldn't really have that much king X. Again, this is kind of going into the kinds of ranges he should be calling flops with. I'm not folding. We're going to call it down here. He has the king queen, so he just floated us with the king queen off, which I think is awful. But he gets paid, so more fool me, I guess. It's never fun when that sort of thing happens, where people just make flop calls with hands they really just shouldn't, and as a result of that you kind of discount those hands from the kinds of hands they can have in their range. So it's always a bit unfortunate, but hey, we're not going to be too sad about it. We've definitely chipped up reasonably well so far this session, so we're not that upset at all. We're going to bring this in for a raise with the 9-7 suited. We are going to defend in position here. I wouldn't mind a fold here either, but this guy has been 3-betting us a little bit. He's certainly on the more aggressive side. We're going to float once here with our gut shot and just with the gut shot here. Purely because, I mean, this guy should be shutting down with a decent chunk of his range here now. My plan was to bluff this turn quite frequently, but I don't think there's any need to do that anymore. The kinds of hands that we were looking to fold out, we are actually ahead of now, so Now it's just a case of whether we want to really try to put the pressure on a hand like pocket tens, jacks, kings, or queens, aces, those types of hands, with like a massive, massive overbet when there are 4 to a straight on the board. I don't think it's necessary. I think he's going to show us hands like unimproved broadways pretty frequently. He may have an overpair, but if he does, then I think we'll just take our showdown value versus the other parts of his range. He has the pocket jacks. Maybe an overbet there would have worked, but I felt when he checked the turn that he was going to have enough ace highs, essentially, that we were ahead of that we didn't need to. But an overbet there definitely wouldn't necessarily have been awful. It probably would have been pretty good anyway, because his range is super capped no matter what he has. He's limited just to single overpairs and the ace high type hands. Now, it's just the only problem is I don't put a huge amount of faith in people's abilities to fold overpairs, even when they should be. So on those kinds of boards with 4 to a straight, it can be a little bit dicey. Obviously, he should be, because most people aren't going to be overbet bluffing in those kinds of spots, whereas I do tend to do it fairly frequently, to be perfectly honest, but he doesn't know that, I assume. So I'm still undecided about that hand. I feel I probably should have fired the river there when he's so capped, but maybe that's just being results orientated. So we have pocket fives in the top right table. We are likely going to bring this in for a 3-bet blind versus blind if he raises, which he does. So we're going to make it 24 cent to go, sir. He just folds pre-flop, which is fine by us. And the 6 and the king, we are going to defend versus a small raise. Fortunately, we just get the walk, which we're absolutely fine with as well. King 9 versus an under the gun open, we're just going to have to stick in the muck. It is going to be a pretty difficult hand to play profitably. And Andre 545 just takes that down without a fight. So, as I said, like generally speaking, I'm not impressed with the standard of play at this pool. It seems fairly weak, certainly very, very passive. So if anyone is interested in getting involved, I would highly recommend doing so. As I said, it's Betsafe we are playing on. You can sign up through the Poker VIP affiliate link and you'll be entitled to 30% rakeback, a match deposit bonus up to €1,000, and as I said, just a very, very soft player pool that has quite low rake as well as exceptionally good rakeback. So all in all, an absolutely winning play in my opinion. We're going to be opening the pocket fives from under the gun in the bottom left table. And we're going to open up the ace-7 suited also. So we have an underpair on a board that will have connected with our opponents somewhat frequently. We're just going to go ahead and check this board. If it checks through, we'll consider betting some turns. I think if it checks through, we are going to fire a small bet here, just for a little more so for protection than anything else. Just I mean, if they have 4 overcards to us, there's a decent chance that they're going to hit one of them. So we want to make them pay for that privilege essentially. And if we can just take this down now, we'll be thrilled, which we do. Awesome. So we had the best hand there, almost certainly. It's very unlikely that we folded out better, but we did protect our hand. We didn't, as I said, we just didn't want to give them a free chance to catch up. I think it's very hard for them to have a very strong hand there as well, so it's not like we're going to get raised there too often, and it's not a particularly good board for them to bluff either, so I don't think that we're running too much of a risk of getting bluffed off of our hand very frequently. The king and the jack we are going to defend versus the min raise over in the top left table. If there is a call or two behind, we'll probably put in a squeeze rather than defend. So black spot does decide to call, and I reckon that's what we're going to do. We are going to bump it up. We're going to stick in a 3-bet over here as well. Oh no, sorry, we're not. I thought that it had just been a single raise. When it gets 3-bet already, we are going to give it up. So a very good flop for us, obviously. We're going to start this off with a check because again, this is a kind of hand where we're going to struggle to get 3 streets of value from better, or from worse rather. So we're going to start this off by checking. We kind of make our hand look like a hand, like an underpair to the king. So he may decide to try to put us under a lot of pressure and decide to bluff at it. So obviously, fantastic turn for us. So now it's just a case of whether we want to just stick the money in ourselves now or not. I think we'll probably do. We're just going to go all in ourselves here with our top 2. Our hand obviously looks extremely strong when we take this line, but this is why being out of position sucks really, really badly. We're not going to be... I don't think he's going to be triple barrel and bluffing too often. So if we just flat call, we've got 2 options. We can check to him and hope that he sticks the money in himself, or we can fold, or we can lead ourselves on the river. So if we lead ourselves, it's a bit of an unusuality. Like, I mean, I just prefer getting it in there because he can definitely have some kind of spade draws that he feels he priced into call and that sort of thing. So I prefer just sticking the money in ourselves rather than playing rivers out of position. And I mean, if he ever checks back a hand like king, queen offsuit or anything like that, it's an absolute disaster for us. So that's why I prefer just putting the money in on the turn rather than having to play rivers out of position. But anyway, that is going to be me for the session, guys. Thank you very much for watching, and we will be back with part 3 very soon. I hope you have enjoyed it. Take care, and I will chat to you all soon.